This is the Lightning Junkies podcast. I'm your host, Chaz Cryptoson. On this episode of the podcast, we have Will Reeves from Fold and Lightning Network Pizza. Both Fold and Lightning Network Pizza are platforms that allow you to spend your Bitcoin, as well as earn Bitcoin back for those purchases. We end up discussing privacy, Bitcoin, the Lightning Network, Occupy Wall Street, amongst other subjects. This is the second episode of the podcast, and I thought I did a lot better. I was able to be a little bit more free-form and not focus so much on the notes that I was looking at. I didn't even write out questions beforehand. I just had general topics laid out. I didn't mention in the previous podcast that the first, second, and third episodes are a part of a series dealing with onboarding newbies to the Lightning Network and the platforms that help to make that happen. As mentioned on the previous podcast, I have no sponsors. The only time I get any money for this podcast is whenever someone chips in via my BTC Pay server or something like tipping.me. This is done by design. I don't like listening to podcasts that have a 10-minute long sponsorship corner, and I hope to keep it that way. Not to say that it's impossible for me to take a sponsor in the future, but they would have to be of the highest possible caliber. And they would have to accept the fact that I'm not going to sugarcoat how I talk about them. If you get anything out of this podcast, please consider chipping in some Bitcoin via the Lightning Network on-chain, or even chip in some dirty fiat. You can do this via the links in the show notes. Without further ado, here is the second episode of the Lightning Junkies podcast. How are you doing today, Will?
I'm doing great, Chaz, and I'm happy to be here.
Fantastic. Before we jump into the kind of Bitcoin portion, what's your general background?
Well, I've been a kind of founder and an entrepreneur building kind of products and primarily in payments and peer-to-peer tech space for the last 10 years or so. That has mainly been on the kind of consumer side of things. Spent some time building the Google Store, building peer-to-peer marketplaces, new payment platforms for merchants to use. And all of that really is kind of now in service of where I find myself today.
Fantastic. Was there anything in that experience that kind of really stood out as something that you really enjoyed, that you really kind of set you up for where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, I like working on kind of complex problems while at the same time working on kind of newer technologies that can promise answers to those problems. And so my experience working in payments and kind of point of sale retail environments, taught me quite a bit about the rapid change in payments, but also the really clear limitations that we currently face with kind of everyday consumer payments. And so really it leaves a lot to be desired. And I think a lot of what we're doing at Fold is kind of filling in those gaps and kind of creating kind of from the ground up a new way to envision kind of everyday retail and everyday commerce. And then on the peer-to-peer side, built things like peer-to-peer marketplaces where people meet and exchange goods, which involves a lot of issues around building trust, as well as creating kind of experiences that onboard people through a full process that may involve a lot of money or valuable goods, and use technology to make sure that the outcome is enjoyable and kind of solves real needs for them.
Got it. How would you say that Bitcoin fit into all that? Was it a kind of natural progression? How did you get into Bitcoin, basically?
Let's see, how did I get into Bitcoin? So Bitcoin, I really kind of look back. I had 3 initial encounters with Bitcoin before I ever kind of really dedicated myself to, working on it full time, but even, really diving deep in the rabbit hole. First experience was, I grew up in Northern California in wine country. My first experience with Bitcoin was watching a group of people teaching migrant farm workers how to use Bitcoin as an alternative for remittances. This is probably back in 2012 or so. Second encounter with Bitcoin was in Argentina, where I was living and that coincided with one of their defaults, their economy defaults, and I made some friends with some security and software engineers, some of whom were into Bitcoin and actually used it very early on as a safe haven asset to kind of get around the devaluation that was affecting the rest of the country. And so it was pretty clear and powerful example of the of one aspect of what Bitcoin can bring to an economy. And then the last one was during Occupy Wall Street in Oakland, where we took in donations with Bitcoin, paid out vendors in Bitcoin, and managed kind of volunteers in this way. So another one showing the unstoppable payments thesis. And so I think all three of those examples kind of come together, show a slightly different perspective on what Bitcoin can do and be for different people in different circumstances. And really, those founding examples for me have kind of driven what we do at Fold, and that's really building infrastructure that make realizing Bitcoin as a superior payments and savings technology, and making that available and accessible to the rest of the world.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Talking about Occupy Wall Street there a little bit, would you kind of see Bitcoin as being a kind of currency of rebellion, or would you kind of see it maybe kind of end up being something a little bit less rebellious over time? What's your take on that?
I think to imagine this hyper Bitcoinization, the a kind of Bitcoin future. I think it necessitates having both of those realities coexist. Um, I do think that at the fundamental basis of it, if we keep Bitcoin as we envision it today, it would accommodate both institutional use cases of Bitcoin as a sound, auditable infrastructure in which to base our kind of financial technology and economy on. I think it will absolutely happen. But I also think just the very nature of it, as long as we can push back on kind of total KYC and push back on de-anonymization of Bitcoin and its users, I think it will also always be a tool of rebellion, liberation, what have you. So I think if this all works out in the way that I'm envisioning, both use cases will be very comfortably supported.
Do you see the kind of KYC future kind of not, taking over, or do you see it just being kind of more of a balance, like you said? Because we've seen shapeshift, local bitcoins, go KYC. Do you see that kind of continuing?
Yeah. So in the short term, I absolutely do. I think we're going to see, I think two areas are going to be an increase in KYC needs, as well as that it's going to be related to kind of increasing regulatory scrutiny that's going to bring on, new needs for licenses and compliance. I definitely see that as something that's going to happen in the short term. But over the long term, I see generally KYC becoming more of a liability for private companies than something that keeps their customers or themselves safe. And by that, I mean, as we increasingly collect and centralize some of the most essential and key pieces of private and personal data across these kind of centralized private organizations, that increasingly puts us all in a more vulnerable state. And so I can see a future where the benefits of KYC are become outweighed by the negative aspects of holding that data, of being responsible for that data. And I think that will necessitate some major changes that may kind of push back against the tide of, in the short term, increasing needs for KYC. I really believe that where we're going with data in general is that Jeremy Welch from Casa put out this great piece that data is no longer the new oil; it's the new kind of sludge, if you will. So I think more and more organizations are going to feel the responsibility and the weight of holding such powerful and personal data for so many users.
Definitely, I think I would agree with that. I want to move on to some lightning questions. So I kind of asked you how you got into Bitcoin. When did you first start using Lightning yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we were so at Fold. We've our primary product and primary kind of use case was payments. We very quickly realized that on-chain layer one payments was not going to be the way to bring Bitcoin payments to the rest of the world. This wasn't scalable. It was too expensive. And it was too complicated. And so we knew very early on that a layer two solution would be required. We did not go down the big block path. We felt the kind of core was moving in the right direction on securing the base chain, and that payments and other applications would be realized on layer two solutions. And so we were pretty bullish on Lightning early on, and we were experimenting, as pretty much as early as it came online. And we were making small lightning payments pretty early on with any of the kind of early laps or lightning enabled apps. And it really took us about a kind of 6 months of tinkering before we actually started to put anything in real production into Fold and Lightning Pizza.
All right. So talking about Fold, how did you start at Fold? I know Fold is an older company almost. They've made a more of a recent comeback. How did you start at Fold?
Fold was initially founded by Matt Luongo back in 2014. And Matt and I had actually worked together on a few other projects outside of the crypto world. And so we knew we wanted to work together. Matt had been working on Fold, but as I told you, the kind of problems that we saw some great volume coming through, but then the fee market started to come, $50 fees on $5 coffees don't quite make sense. And so Matt and I decided to come together once we saw that the Lightning solutions were coming online, were viable. We had done some experimentation. And so I officially came to take over Fold about a year and a half ago to kind of reorient the company to kind of start directly tackling Lightning, but also broadening the kind of vision of what we wanted to do at Fold beyond simply retail payments.
Okay. Where did Lightning Network Pizza come from?
So we knew we wanted to get into the center of the Lightning community and pretty much in the middle of the action. And so we'd been experimenting with Lightning, making payments ourselves, running our own nodes, trying to break as much as we could on our end. And once we felt like we had enough information, we knew we wanted to launch an experiment that kind of would do a couple things. Number one, it would have far reach and reach a lot of people, provide a real use case that people would make people actually want to use Lightning and have a reason to adopt Lightning or a Lightning wallet. And then thirdly, we wanted it to be a real world kind of use case, something that was not just something digital to unlock, but that interfaced with multiple different organizations or parties. And so this, we quickly landed on Lightning Pizza, partly because we knew the power of the Bitcoin and pizza meme, and we thought it was really appropriate to revive that with the kind of growth of Lightning Network and to kind of be a good symbol of where Lightning is. And so we developed Lightning Pizza, basically plugging into the Domino's POS system, creating our own ordering interface, and allowing people to buy Domino's delivery or carry out with a kind of 5, sometimes 10% discount, depending on the day. And we wanted to launch that to get as much activity as possible to pretty much accelerate our own learnings on how the Lightning Network works and how to work with it best.
Do you think that discount was a important piece to the entire thing?
So I think the discount was important. However, I think you'll see we don't really promote the discount as as a primary thing on Lightning Pizza. You can see it has a little banner up top, but pretty much it's not in your face. This is the reason to use Lightning Pizza, and that's partly because we wanted to see what the organic uptake would be with Lightning users. Just how many people are out there looking to spend. And so while I think it definitely plays a piece, and it definitely helps people justify even spending their sats, I don't think it is only it, but I think it's a really strong value proposition. The second value proposition is that we've noticed Domino's is a publicly traded company. So we also get to see average order values of Domino's, frequencies of ordering from users, and things like that. And almost all of those metrics, Lightning Pizza excels beyond them. And part of that is because we believe that once you're set up with a Lightning wallet, the actual transaction and checkout itself is extremely simple compared to even a credit card transaction on Domino's own website. It's much faster, it's simpler, it's safer, and on the top you do get a good discount to justify the spend. But we didn't want to give too much of a discount, just enough to kind of lower the barrier to entry in terms of spending your Bitcoin, but more we wanted to test, can Lightning create a better retail or checkout payment method than what's currently available? And I think we have really great reason to believe that while it's early, it definitely can be.
Okay. My personal little essay that I've been writing on my blog here has been around the idea of trying to leapfrog newbies directly into Lightning, jumping over the base chain of Bitcoin and getting them straight into Lightning. Do you think there's anything to that, or do you think it makes more sense to get people acclimatized to Bitcoin first and then get them into Lightning later?
I am absolutely in agreement with you. I think it's really interesting to see some of the new Lightning wallets out there, like Lightning Labs' own wallet, Breeze wallet, that actually do just that. It completely kind of subverts the experience. So you're basically, it feels like you're being onboarded directly into Lightning, as opposed to having a base chain on chain wallet and then moving into Lightning. And I think this is very much the way to go, both in terms of fees, in terms of speed and usability for users. It's kind of closer to what they would expect. And so we at Fold are looking for ways to cleverly do this. And I think you see how we offer kickbacks or rewards on purchases through Fold and soon to be through Lightning Pizza. That Bitcoin cash back is going to be withdrawn directly into a Lightning channel ready for you to use to essentially onboard people directly into Lightning. So I think absolutely agree with you on that.
I really like the kickbacks program myself. We'll come back to that here in a moment. I wanted to ask first, about Lightning. Have you experienced any issues or anything that kind of held you back? Any like errors, any big upsets that took you a long time to figure out?
You know, a lot of it has been a learning experience, and the thing that makes some of this could be difficult, but I think Lightning has one of the most robust and tight knit communities across the crypto ecosystem. And that makes us as Fold, our job much easier because we are directly connected with nearly all of the major Lightning services operating on Lightning, building on Lightning. And that means information gets passed around very quickly. We get to see issues before they arise. We get to have warning on things. And with that layer of community, we feel much more comfortable developing faster. So, I think it was good this last week. You saw that vulnerability that came out in the 7.0 version of Lightning and a couple of implementations. And I think while it's concerning, I think it's pretty incredible that it's been this rare uh, after this long. And I think it's a good reminder that we are not out of the kind of reckless phase of Lightning, but we're pretty damn close. And so we have definitely experienced headaches with channel management and balancing, and the user experience of the whole thing. But those I'm confident that this community is going to solve very quickly. And even the larger vulnerabilities, it seemed to be work out okay for everyone, at least for this go round.
Okay. I just wanted to maybe give a bit more detail on Fold itself. What is Fold, and what is the prime use case for it here? Just so everyone listening has an idea.
Fold aims to make Bitcoin more accessible and rewarding for mainstream consumers. And what that means is that we bring the fundamental benefits of Bitcoin as both a payments technology and a savings technology to the forefront and allow people to experience it in their everyday lives. And so, what does that mean? So, on the payment side, we offer on Fold Lightning payments at retailers and soon to be credit and debit card payments at retailers that essentially allow you to keep all your payments private. So, you never give up any of your transaction details, payment information. Or any other kind of your browsing data, you keep all of that safe and private when you pay through Fold, and a lot of that is enabled through Lightning transactions. And so we think that Bitcoin as a payment method offers a level of privacy, speed, and finality that is going to be very rewarding for users down in the long term. And so we're building kind of infrastructure to support that as in everyday retail purchases.
I was just going to go into the privacy portion a little bit more here. Do you think that there is a big advantage to Lightning over the base chain of Bitcoin as far as payments go?
Absolutely. I think Lightning right now is our best chance and technology for realizing the true benefits of Bitcoin as a payment method for kind of everyday transactions. And those benefits will quickly be realized by both consumers and retailers. So on the consumer side, the speed of transactions, the cost of the transactions, as well as the privacy preserving nature of spending is provides an incredible experience when you match that against even paying with a credit card. When you go through a Lightning transaction, it's faster and it is safer than paying with your credit card on almost any e-commerce site, and Fold enables you to do that. On the merchant side, Lightning provides finality in ways that no other payment method does today. The possibility of a merchant finalizing daily payments or payments on an hourly basis opens up entirely new use cases and paradigms for merchants, especially smaller and mid-sized merchants. And that will allow merchants to have some efficiencies to then pay back to consumers in terms of incentives and rewards. And so we're very bullish on the fact of Bitcoin being a superior payment method in the long run. But it is also extremely related to why we also work on Bitcoin as a savings technology and how we get Bitcoin into the hands of as many people as possible as fast as possible.
Okay. You mentioned before about the kickback program. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so Fold works with merchants by directly integrating with their prepaid access programs. So this is essentially store credit at retailers or gift cards at retailers. There's a few different um, names for prepaid access programs depending on where you are. And so Fold accepts payment and then produces a code in which you use at that merchant. Essentially, it's like a burner code or a burner payment that you use one time. And because we go through prepaid programs, merchants have lower processing fees and they have reduced chargebacks, and we're bringing them new customers. And so our retail partners negotiate with us a discount that then we pass on to our users as rewards via our kickbacks program. So on average, our merchants give back around 5%. However, it can go up to 20%, which you see with Burger King, I believe, and a couple other brands that you'll see today. And those are all paid out instantly in the form of Bitcoin.
I really like that kickbacks program. Something that I wanted to ask related to that is there's several other services in the space that are doing something similar, like Casa has their Satsback program, etc. Do you think that is going to be increasingly more popular of a thing to do to onboard people by giving them Bitcoin for purchases they might ordinarily make?
I think it is an absolutely necessary part, an effective strategy for growing the network and growing users. How I look at rewards is that it will be a key part of every crypto company's strategy, as well as incumbent or traditional company strategy to get into crypto. And so my core belief is that rewards are incredibly important, but you need to be building value beyond rewards, because at the end of the day, there are incumbents that offer rewards for purchasing at retailers, and they can switch on Bitcoin payments, with pretty much with the flip of a switch. And so it's our core belief at Fold that rewards are an incredible incentive to lower the barrier of entry or kind of cost calculation for someone to use your service. And it's really necessary to get a large group of people to do that. However, you need to also be building infrastructure, whether through payments or savings products, to then take advantage of those incentives to create a true kind of business around it. And so for us, we think it will be ubiquitous rewards, and that's a great thing because that means more people have Bitcoin. But in terms of from a business perspective, we feel the rewards are just the tip of the iceberg, and really the most value is going to be found in the kind of larger payment stack that we're building out.
Okay. A question that I have kind of have been having a hard time dealing with on my end is the idea of tax implications for spending Bitcoin. Do you have any particular opinion on that, or what people should be doing, or anything like that?
Yeah. So to be honest, Coin Center has a bill out on kind of, I believe it's called the de minimis clause, which allows any transaction under $500 or $600 to go untaxed and treated similarly as many other assets are. And frankly, that would be a game changer for the Bitcoin payments. Currently, the tax situation is definitely one of the largest barriers to entry and usage that we see currently. And if solved, would have huge consequences for both Bitcoin payments and I think Bitcoin overall. Now, there are a few things that we can do in the short term that we are helping users with. Is that we are partnering with tax companies to help you with the taxing and reporting issues, help you better report that so it takes a lot less time. And I think you'll realize now is that when I first was doing tax reporting on Bitcoin payments years ago, that would take several hours. Now it could take an hour or two maximum. And so we are improving, but it's still by no means something that we should expect, mainstream consumers to do by any means. And so really right now, I think we need to do, work on both sides of this. Number one is advocating for the change of classification and taxation of Bitcoin as an asset class, which is being done by a lot of great companies, but I think more people need to get involved with that. I would suggest everyone reach out to Coin Center on how they can help out with that process or even just donate to them. The second is creating tools and services right now that make it easier and lessen the burden on people in the here and now. And that is both faster ways to have fiat to Bitcoin conversions so that people can purchase Bitcoin on the spot for different payments and purchases, as well as helping with the reporting aspect. I think both of those sides need to be worked on to help with the taxation issue in regards to payments.
Yeah, I've definitely seen people on Twitter that were very hesitant to actually make payments either with Bitcoin or with Lightning just because of the tax, burden or implications. Do you think the overall pros of, making payments with Bitcoin or Lightning, discounts or what have you, kind of outweigh those potential burdens?
Bitcoin is a global technology, and with almost every answer I have with it, it depends on your situation and where you are. For people in many different countries, Bitcoin is not taxed like it is here in the United States. And so it very much does make sense for them to use it as a payments technology, especially when paired with the great Lightning speed and cost with great user experience. In those cases, I think it absolutely makes sense. Now, when you're talking about in the United States, one of the important things about our Kickbacks program is to give you an incentive to actually to take on some of the tax work because you're getting more kickbacks than you would pretty much from any other source possible. And so for some, I believe it does make sense. And others, we are working on solutions for you so that it does. That's kind of our primary goal.
Okay. So you kind of mentioned before that you were looking into or, possibly just about to launch debit and credit cards on Fold. Now, to like a Bitcoiner, that sounds like we're going backwards here. What's your idea behind that?
So I think everyone knows Fold as a kind of hardcore uh, Bitcoiner product. We've only supported Bitcoin ever. We've been one of the earliest services on both on chain payments as well as Lightning payments, and we have developed kind of a lot of our value proposition, our vision, our principles are directly from the Bitcoin community. But we know, and I think all Bitcoiners know, is that in order to grow this system, we need to increase adoption. And that's going to either be adoption through more volume running through the system or more users running through the system. And ideally, it's both of them. And so we see that lowering the barrier to entry into Bitcoin, having it not be simply dominated by KYC walled speculative use cases, Fold sees a very clear opportunity to allow any person in the US and very soon internationally to sync their credit card and debit card and earn Bitcoin, whether they're shopping online, offline, in app, wherever they are. Fold will start accumulating Bitcoin on their behalf. And as people start to accumulate that Bitcoin and see the value of it, they're able to use it on a future purchase with Fold, or they can simply accumulate and hold it. And with us, we encourage people to spend it by offering even more percent back rewards if you choose to then spend Bitcoin. And so our whole thing is creating a funnel that reaches the most uneducated pre-coiner that you can imagine, giving them an easy way to onboard into the space, and then have our products slowly be able to incentivize them to come deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole.
Okay, got it. I just want to change things up here slightly. If I understand it, Fold is owned by a company called Thesis. Is this right?
So Fold was incubated within Thesis, which is a venture production studio that works on various kind of protocols and products related to kind of Bitcoin and kind of generally blockchain technology. Fold was incubated within Thesis. However, we'll soon be announcing our spin out from Thesis as a kind of separate entity with a whole new set of partners that will be joining us for our kind of next upcoming milestones.
Interesting. I just wanted to ask about Thesis really fast here. One other product that I saw that they're working on over there is something called TBTC. Do you have any opinion about that? Kind of being loosely connected or very connected to Thesis.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other one of the other verticals at Thesis is Keep Network, and they have developed something called TBTC, which is essentially allowing interoperability between Ethereum and Bitcoin blockchains to essentially give Bitcoin the DeFi qualities that you may find with Ethereum projects, and to give Ethereum the liquidity that is associated with Bitcoin projects. And so I think overall it is very interesting project, and I'm very excited to see where this takes interoperability in general. I think it overall has some great implications for both communities, and there are reasons for both camps to be really excited about this. And I also can't imagine a better team than Keep and Suma working on this project. Both projects with some hardcore Bitcoiners that also understand how kind of DeFi works and kind of the vision there. So I'm very interested to see how they're going to bring this together.
All right, great. Finally, I just kind of wanted to go more broad here and just go to where do you see Bitcoin kind of ending up in the next, maybe decade? Do we turn it more into a digital gold thing, or as Fold and that whole the company kind of pushes more towards payments? Do you think we'll actually be doing more payments? Will they all be on Bitcoin? Will they all be on Lightning? Will there be a mix? Will the fees be crazy, etc.? How do you see things turning out?
Oh man, nearly every prediction like this is always interesting to make. However, I think we're going to get both. I think the debates between Bitcoin being a kind of store of value will come to fruition as we see the kind of macro markets start to position Bitcoin as more and more of an attractive asset. And as more and more countries start to take stances on it, it's gonna really do a lot for Bitcoin as a kind of international savings and kind of safe haven asset that I think will continue to develop, especially in these zero to sub-zero interest times. I am less concerned about that piece because I think right now, even where Bitcoin is at in its technology, is pretty advanced and well suited to fit that very use case right now. And I think that will only continue to grow stronger. I think the parts that Bitcoin and the community are working on now, why you see so much energy around Lightning Network, is because that is the piece of the technology that has not matched up to the user experience and capabilities that we need it to become to be a medium of exchange or a payment method. And so I think as Lightning continues to mature, it is going to take more and more of the overall movement of Bitcoin payments. Less will happen on chain, more will happen off chain on Lightning. We are going to see it taken up more and more as a payment method around the world. We're already seeing countries change their laws around taxation of Bitcoin payments. And I don't expect all countries to come out favorably in this, but I expect enough to, where there will always be enough activity there. I think Lightning will be broadened to include stablecoins, and we'll have interoperability between the stablecoins and Bitcoin, which I think provides some interesting use cases there. But overall, I am very much in a vision that Bitcoin in a decade will be a superior payments and savings technology for a large subset of people in the world. And that subset may always change depending on conditions in their country or their region or their personal lives. But I think Bitcoin is big enough and broad enough to fit those use cases for a lot of people.
What would you say the most exciting thing is for you with Bitcoin or Lightning?
For me right now, the most exciting thing is getting as many people Bitcoin as possible in as short of time as possible. I'd say my own journey into Bitcoin and seeing the community and the potential that this technology promises, I think will only benefit from more and more people holding it and using it. And so for me, it is the most exciting thing is in finding ways to introduce it to the most amount of people in the least amount of time. That's pretty much what I spend my most time thinking about.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping up the podcast here, but before we go, do you want to let all the listeners know, how they can find, you, Fold, the Lightning Network pizza and all that?
Absolutely, we've got a lot of things here. Well, you can find me on Twitter at WLRVS. And you can find Fold at fold_app or foldapp.com. And there you'll be able to pay for everyday things over the Lightning Network and earn up to 20% back in Bitcoin. And we'll soon be dropping some pretty incredible releases this month. So stay tuned there. And on Lightning Pizza, you can find us at LN_pizza on Twitter or LN.pizza online, and make sure to get that 5% discount. Otherwise, hit us up and we'll help you get onboarded into Lightning, answer any questions about Lightning Pizza. And for all kind of newbies or people who want to share with newbies, we actually just released something today called myfirstbitcoinpizza.com. Essentially, it's a kind of a primer step by step on how to onboard someone who's a pre-coiner, get them Bitcoin, get them into a Bitcoin wallet, get them into a Lightning wallet, and then finally get them their first Lightning pizza. So myfirstbitcoinpizza.com, everyone should check out.
Amazing. I'm going to have to check that out as soon as we're done here. Well, I really appreciate you joining me on the Lightning Junkies podcast. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Chaz. You too.
There you have it. That was the second episode of the Lightning Junkies podcast. What did you think? Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you took something away from that. go check out Fold and Lightning Network Pizza right away. In the meantime, if you did learn something or took something away from this podcast, please consider chipping in some sats via the crowdfunding campaign or tipping.me. You'll find the links in the show notes. Otherwise, if you like the podcast, please consider subscribing or leaving a review on any relevant podcast website out there. Until next time, I'll see you on the Lightning Network.